video, I am going to be discussing the TN Visa Professions and Occupations list under the USMCA, which is formerly NAFTA, and that is found under Appendix 1603D1 under the USMCA. And this is for Canadian and Mexican citizens who are looking to work in the United States or have a job offer to work in the United States. TN visa status is only available to citizens of those countries. You cannot be a permanent resident of those countries. You must be a citizen. And I'm referencing our website where you will find the most comprehensive list anywhere on the internet discussing the TN visa occupations and professions. And what we've done is we've taken the list from the USMCA and we've expanded in much more detail so that individuals who are trying to identify whether or not their occupation qualifies can reference our list, find their occupation, or determine whether or not their occupation is on the list, and then compare the duties, the education, and everything that's associated with the job you're looking at in the United States against the actual list from the USMCA, Department of Labor requirements, and hopefully determine whether or not that job offer you have in the US or whether or not your education would qualify you for TN status in the United States. Now, when you're looking at the list, it's broken down into 4 general occupational categories: general, medical, science, and teaching. And within the general professions list, you will find the professions such as an architect, an engineer, a graphic designer, a mathematician, social worker, statistician, a technical publications writer, and many more. And then when you move on to the medical professions, you will find the dentists, the pharmacists, the occupational therapists, the registered nurses, and other qualifying medical professions. Then when you move on to the science professions, you will find the biologists, the chemists, the physicists, the zoologists, and other science-related professions. And then finally, at the bottom, you will find the teaching professions, which is very straightforward. There's only 3 of them: a college teacher, a seminary teacher, or a university teacher. Now, when you're referencing this list and you're looking at an occupation, and we'll use computer systems analyst for example, there is a plus sign next to that occupation on our list. Once you click that, it's going to expand the explanation of that occupation. And you will then see a job description, and the job description that we use references the Department of Labor job description, explaining what the Department of Labor, therefore CBP and USCIS, say that a computer systems analyst would do. Then after the description, it moves into qualifications, and it lists the minimum qualifications under the USMCA in order for you to qualify for a TN for that occupation. And in addition, at the bottom of each explanation, you'll find another link. And if you click that link, it will tell you how to qualify for TN status for that occupation. If you determine that you are a fit and that occupation is one that you would be able to qualify for TN status. Now, how is this helpful? How do you use this list? Well, number one, if you have a job offer in the United States, the first thing you should do is you should review this entire list, and you should look for your occupation on the list. And if your occupation is on the list, then the next thing you should do is open up that occupation and then look at what the minimum qualifications are to work in the United States under that occupation. And then compare your education and your experience against those requirements for that occupation. And if both are a match, then chances are you would qualify for TN status. Now, one of the issues that many individuals run into is that their job offer in the United States doesn't exactly match one of these occupations on the list. Now, what do you do in that scenario? Our suggestion is look at what your duties are. What are the duties that you perform on a regular basis? Now, compare those duties against one of the occupations on the list. Are your duties consistent with an occupation on the list? If so, even though your internal job title or the job offer may be for a title that is not on the list, you may still qualify under an occupation because your duties are substantially similar to the duties on the list. The same applies to your education. If your occupation is on the list, but then your education is slightly off, maybe you're looking at engineer and your degree doesn't explicitly say engineer, but your coursework was heavy in mathematics and over 50% of your course load would be substantially similar to an engineer in the training and education of an engineer, maybe you can still qualify because your education is substantially related to that. So just because it's not on the list doesn't mean you won't qualify. You may need to dig a little bit deeper to determine whether or not you do qualify or not. And that can be done both with your job description as well as your education to determine ultimately whether or not you will qualify for TN status. So this list and the way we've broken down is very helpful. Not only because it lists all those occupations in the minimum requirements, but also because it references the U.S. Department of Labor explanation for these occupations, which is how the border and USCIS determine whether or not the job that you've been offered in the United States would qualify under that TN occupation. If you have questions about TN status, if you have questions about whether or not the job you've been offered in the United States will qualify for a TN, we handle TN visas on a regular basis for both Canadian and Mexican citizens, and we can assist you with that process and determining your qualifications, as well as helping you apply properly to obtain TN status to work and live in the United States.